We're continuing to explore sites that made Boston's Black community instrumental in the American Revolution through Change to Change, a series I recently teamed up with the Loop Lab to create, and you are seeing it first. Thus far, we've talked about the importance of monuments to our history on Boston Common, Black wealth and power on Beacon Hill, and the battle for school equality that helped lay the foundation for desegregation fights to come. Now, we'll hear about the role of the Black barbershop in revolutionary times, Black women's role in liberation, and how partnership made change possible. I'm Paris Alston, and this is Rooted. During the American Revolution, places where Black Bostonians lived, worked, and gathered were often much more than they appeared. This includes the barbershop, which became a center of resistance and community organizing. Here, everyday conversations fueled and shaped the fight for freedom and political movements. We head to Blins in Jamaica Plain to sit down with owner David Carrasquillo and Dr. Joyce Hope Scott and learn how that legacy continues today.
This is like guerrilla warfare, especially during revolutionary and colonial Boston. The barbershop is the war room. They were really waging a battle while at the same time chipping away at the slaveocracy. They were the heroes, the unsung heroes, the barbershop.
Today we're on Beacon Hill, which most people know for its wealth, the beautiful homes, the cobblestone streets. But there's a part of the story that's missing.
What these men were able to accomplish, nobody gave it to them.
We have no right to hide these stories. They need to know the full story of Boston.
Knowledge is power. The more you know, the more you do.
Communities are built through connection. In the places where people gather, stories are shared, relationships are formed, and ideas can grow into action. Today, we'll explore how everyday spaces like barbershops became powerful centers of leadership and change during the Revolution, and how these spaces continue to build community. We're here in Boston Blends Barbershop with owner David Carrasquillo. And we know that barbershops are obviously places where people come to get their hair cut, but Joyce, there is a much deeper history behind them, right?
Yes, they were businesses and they were sites of activism. The John Smith House on Beacon Hill, for example, Thomas Cole, Peter Howard. These are just some of the men who ran barbershops. But at the same time, they were clandestinely operating as Underground Railroad sites, as safe houses for people who had escaped slavery. And the barbershops were for the elite white establishment because it was quite a long time before Black barbers could actually cater to Black men. And so they were, of course, chummy with the elite among the whites who knew them, respected them, especially people like John Smith, who was even a Massachusetts legislator. And at the same time, a person who was at the forefront. He was one of the leaders among the activist movement for abolition, anti-slavery, and certainly on the Underground Railroad for receiving people, hiding them in his establishment as well as his home, etc. Thomas Cole, Peter Howard, they all did the same thing. In fact, barbering was pretty common. It was a first-line way to accumulate wealth in revolutionary and colonial Boston. They were able to buy property, obviously, on Beacon Hill, homes, and at the same time run exclusive shops. Long before we come to the barbershops of the 1950s and 60s, it was a safe space for Black men and operating not only to beautify people, but at the same time they were operating clandestinely.
And David, you're doing this work today. Now, you don't have to confirm or deny whether you're doing the kind of networking that Joyce is talking about. But what are some of the ways that what she is describing shows up in your barbershop today?
Barbering always been the beginning of social media. We know everything that goes on in the city. And it's amazing. What she said is the truth. You know, there's so much information that goes into the barbershop, in and out. Political, whatever goes on in the streets. I've never been more appreciated in my life until I picked up a pair of clippers. Like, as far as reaching out to the community and being that pillar Like when I reach out to other kids, it just gives me that feel that I feel good about doing something for them. How can I say? I got so much to give to them.
And when you started Blends, did you have this knowledge of this history of barbershops being places of organizing and connecting?
No, I didn't. It's the first time I'm hearing it.
He is absolutely in the tradition. That leadership role, that feeling of being responsible for the greater good. You know, black barbers have always been those people for the greater good, because they could be trusted. You know, in the barbershop, the black men were safe. You know, they could be themselves. They could speak freely. In the days of Smith and others, the white patrons felt that they could be free to speak too. So people feel safe there. The barber, after all, they're very intimate with you. They've got their razors around your neck, on your hair, you know.
And you better not cheat on your barber.
No. Anybody but your barber, probably, you know. So they have always held that special place. They were the heroes, the unsung heroes, the barbershop.
How does it make you feel to hear that, David?
It feels good because, you know, knowledge is power. The more you know, the more you do.
Well, here's to the barbershop being a place where that knowledge is spread. And thank you both so much.
Absolutely.
The fight for freedom was built by more than the names we see in history books. And those names weren't just of men. Black women organized, led, and shaped liberation movements from within spaces that were crucial to their communities in revolutionary times. Dr. Joyce Hope Scott tells us more. Today we're talking about the Charles Street Meeting House and the African Meeting House, two spaces often associated with abolition and activism. But there's a part of the story that's missing. Joyce, can you tell us more?
There's a big part of the story that's missing, but to give them due credit, these are centrally important buildings for the abolitionist movement. Essentially, they have historic value in terms of the African American community overall. And I think the story that doesn't get a lot of billing, the Black Women's Club movement, hosted there in 1787, becomes a very, very important, crucial site in that respect, both the Charles Meeting House and the African Meeting House.
And what role did those Black women play in coming together and organizing?
So the story that's never been told, or the half that's never been told, has to do with the role these women played in the whole history of the revolutionary struggle as well as the abolitionist struggle. They were certainly pushing against the confinements that the society set up for them as women, and then, of course, as Black women. So the intersectionality is something that they were very aware of, you know, and they were concerned about the general welfare of the community. They were doing things like, you know, clean up. They were concerned about health care. They're the very same things that women and people are concerned about today. The women who followed in their footsteps, like, you know, Josephine St. Pierre Ruffin and Mary Church Terrell and Harriet Tubman, these women that got together and formed this great organization at a time when what was happening in the press, it was like a press campaign against Black women to denigrate their character, to sully their status. Josephine St. Pierre Ruffin, who basically organized the women's club assembly here in Boston. So this particularly damaging, very inflammatory and just crude article was like for her the last straw. And so the idea of get all these women's clubs together, Black women's clubs from across the country, come together here in Boston and at the Charles Meeting House. For us, those of us here in Boston, how so much of it comes right back here to Boston. Mm-hmm. And then to these two historic sites, the Charles Meeting House and the African Meeting House. So many of the efforts that are maybe now associated with the civil rights movement as first happened here with women pushing against the grain. I think it's crucial that we know what they did together, because they were the real movers and shakers of this whole liberatory struggle.
Wow. And you've lifted up the names of so many of these women. I want to pull in one more, Sarah Redmond Parker.
Oh, Sarah Redmond Parker. What a fighter.
Yeah, tell us more.
So she bought tickets to the Howard Athenaeum to a opera performance here in Boston back in 1853. They wanted to take their seats, and they were refused the seats. Though they paid the money. There was no policy in Boston that segregated audiences, and so he called in a local policeman who came in and took her. Sarah ripped her dress and pushed her down the stairs, according to her story. Essentially, it was called the Great Ejection. The story was she and her sister brought the opera aficionado and the police officer to court, and so the argument was that they broke a contract. And so the judge made it clear that he was not ruling about integration or anything of that nature, nor was she bringing a case about that. She was bringing a case about the fact that her right to sit there in a contractual relationship, and the judge ruled in her favor.
Wow.
This happened almost exactly 100 years before Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on the Montgomery bus back in 1955. Which is what I mean about stories being hidden. She's just one extraordinary woman who used the court system to their advantage, which is what becomes the foundation for the civil rights movement. So I think that's so crucial, because women are really the ones who led this here.
Acts of liberation aren't only found in moments of escape or resistance, they're also found in the staying power of Black love and community. On our final stop, Dr. Joyce Hope Scott shows us how the bond between two couples and the network among a group of residents fueled a movement that was built to last. Today we're talking about two power couples, and the first one is the Haydens. Tell me about them and their impact.
Okay, Louis and Harriet Hayden were indeed a power couple. They escaped slavery together and went together as far as Canada and ultimately found their way back, here to Boston, and established a place on Beacon Hill, the Hayden House, which is what we have today. They devoted their lives. I mean, Louis Hayden, Harriet, they together worked for people on the Underground Railroad to receive runaways or to invest in the community and philanthropic endeavors and so on, all of their lives. And when Louis passed on, Harriet continued her work, even donating all of her wealth to Harvard for the medical education of Black students. So we want to talk about a power couple and coming from rags to riches. This is really a story of from chains to change.
And there's a lesser known couple as well, the Browns.
Yes, Joseph and Lucretia Thomas Brown. Again, a powerhouse of a couple, known for having gotten property as the Haydens did. They opened a tavern that was open to Blacks and whites. And one of the things that this tavern was known for is that it hosted what is called Negro Election Day. Negro Election Day, it began, I can't get any proof for this one. Somebody says it's 1639, but we can trace it back to 1750. They had their own elections. They elected a king or governor, as they called them, governor or king. These people that they elected were officials. They spoke for the community. They had authority in the community to settle disputes, etc. It was a celebration. They had food, they had parades, they had their pomp and circumstances and music and drums, and this went on from 1750 into the 20th century, and it is now a state-recognized holiday as of 2023. 1750. This is before there is even a revolution. They understood the importance of representation.
Yes, way before.
Long before. Okay, so let's talk about that. How far ahead of the Civil Rights Act is this? Civil rights movement. We're talking about something that African people established in 1750. These are continuations
And I understand that Joseph Brown was a veteran in the Revolutionary War. How did that come to be?
Yes, he was. Indeed, he served out the time of his master, which was not an unusual thing at the time. People sent their enslaved men off to fight in their stead, extended right into the Civil War. Naturally, he was a veteran of the Revolutionary War. So in terms of rights for widows, she petitioned for what she felt was right, that he was indeed a veteran, and as a veteran, due that recognition, and she, as his wife, was due, according to law, his pension. And so she sued for that and won.
So we've been talking about networks, and you mentioned Smith Court, the Smith Court residences. Tell us more about how that plays into all of this.
An interesting place indeed. The Smith Court residences were not owned by one person. It was a collection of homes, more like a community, a collective. It served as a home site for people who needed a place to lay their heads, so to speak, as well as a place for radical action to take place. Intellectuals like William Cooper Nell, who lived there, was the first Black man to publish a history. To runaways and newly freed people, and maybe some ex-slaves that were hiding out there. Again, that's how it served. It's kind of an exciting notion to think that maybe I could have found Frederick Douglass and Ida B. Wells in there with the further follow-up conversation about lynching. People talked about all of these things.
It sounds like it was creating a safe place too. Like, I think about how that probably laid the groundwork for all of the locations we see in the Green Book.
Exactly. This was a collection of sites that belonged to people who put them to the service of one particular cause, the liberation struggle.
Well, what a wonderful journey that was. And now we're going to give you a little bit of a behind the scenes look, because we have with us Reverend Chris Hope, who is the founder and the executive director of the Loop Lab, which of course produced this series, Chains to Change. Reverend Hope, so great to see you.
So great to see you and see you again. I mean, doing this project with you was fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. The feeling is so mutual. So why was this project necessary now?
First of all, I would like to share that this particular project was made possible through MA 250 in partnership with the Massachusetts Office of Travel and Tourism and Bloomberg Connects. And the idea and focus was really to trace the African-American, Afro-diasporic history during the American Revolution and ultimately trying to connect it directly to today. We wanted to really tell a story from Chains to Change about right now, because right now is exactly when it's under pressure. When institutions are being told to soften or to really completely erase history, especially Black history, we believe that the right response at the Loop Lab isn't silence, it's more truth-telling, and truth-telling through storytelling, not less. And so just naming the moment that we're in, we're seeing in our reality more cultural institutions like the Smithsonian being required to minimize and reframe African American history. And, Massachusetts and Boston, for us choosing to fund and platform this project through MA 250 is really a deliberate counter move to kind of the more national things that what we're seeing abroad, broadly. And so for us, this project is timely. And the goal of us is really truth-telling and preserving the history of African Americans and their role within the revolution, that folks were not just parachuted in, we were a part of it, an active part of it.
Yeah, and people forget that often, right? Like we talk about Beacon Hill and how it looks very different today than it did during the revolution, especially when you think about who is there. And I have to say, Dr. Joyce was like so instrumental in bringing this history to life. Like, what a wealth of knowledge. How did you decide to partner with her?
Well, Dr. Joyce Hope Scott is a professor of African American Studies at Boston University. She is well versed, and it was really critical for us to bring on a formidable researcher who could really go into not only the history but understand the contextual accounting that these stories in the Torah would cover. And so that, in addition to her work with Hope for Africa, which is a major international Afro-diasporic organization that works with the United Nations and does similar work internationally, it was a no-brainer. And so for her to be able to come in to do the research, ground the series in historical record, in terms of the black soldiers, the laborers, the power couples of the Revolutionary era whose role often are left out. And so I thought, for our conversations together is really, what can we do to also highlight some of the underestimated stories of African Americans during that time?
Yeah, which she did so well. I learned a ton, right? Like, I'm always explaining to people, I'm just the vessel. I'm there to take direction and do the thing. You all at the Loop Lab are there to make it all look great and polish and put it all together. And someone like Dr. Joyce is there to make sure that we've got it historically accurate.
Yeah, and that's absolutely critical to all of this. You can't capture the history if you don't have it accurately.
Now, obviously, there was a whole team of people who were putting this together. Who are some other folks you'd like to shout out?
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to give acknowledgement to Megan Shea and Persistent Productions. We had really a spectrum of different producers and co-producers that wanted to come on board for this project. And having worked with Megan and other platforms, it really was something that I thought would be critical to work with someone who understood what we were trying to achieve and understood the heart and also knew what was at stake. And so Megan very quickly came on and had not only her own ideas, but had a team that was more than capable and effective of doing the storytelling and truth-telling. In addition to that, the Loop Lab is a state-registered nonprofit intermediary workforce development organization, and what we do is we provide working opportunities for opportunity youth, so 16 to 26-year-olds in Massachusetts to get into the audio video trades. And so not only do you have the professional team of Persistent Productions in the Loop Lab and our professional videographers and filmmakers, you also have this group of up-and-coming young filmmakers that are coming from Greater Boston, coming from parts of the state itself that are contributing. So it was really a win-win to be able to not only do this in a way where it was ethical in bringing along and addressing the pipeline for media and also these kinds of projects, we're also creating a quality project that we hope will not only preserve the history of African Americans during the Revolution, but more importantly, bring a sense of urgency of why that matters today. I would also give a huge acknowledgement to the individuals that we reached out to, people like Dr. Amari Jeffries at Embrace, who did, I think, a wonderful job talking and talking with you, but also bringing, his own perspective historically to the conversations, and also Nicole Obie, the president of Black Economic Council of Massachusetts, as well as some of the others that I thought really...
Yeah, like David Carrasquillo, who owns Blend. I was like, what is this barbershop?
Exactly.
It's
a whole other world.
Place.
And that's what the barbershop then, back in the 1700s, up till now, still serves as not just a place to get your hair cut, but a place, a community convening space, a safe space, a third space for people of the Afro diaspora, but also African Americans, to really embrace one another, find out what's happening with gossip, news in the community, to share information. And I think that it was really important for us to highlight that in this project, not only to make it relatable, but also to get folks to understand that this is not just history. This is still unfolding today in 2026, 2027, that this is, activity in practice, and also activity that's still going on to this day. Yeah.
Tell me about, because there were a couple days that you were on set, Reverend Hope, and it was so wonderful to see you and to to see how you were absorbing this vision coming to life. Tell me about the moment that you knew it was going to work.
You know, when you're part of these things, you never know how they're going to go. But I think being on set, I saw obviously your work and your participation, the chemistry you had with Dr. Joyce Hope Scott, but also the young adults. I always, because with the Loop Lab, I always lean to what are the apprentices learning and how are they evolving in the midst of these kinds of projects, and being able to see them just pick up, you know, on set and be able to not only...
They're sharp.
Yeah, they're sharp, and they're contributing to the production value. They're providing support, camera work, and also on the editing, and just to see them understand, but also the other part of it, like Antonio, being able to contribute his own perspective. One of the things I think I shared with you earlier was that he did a photography series before this project that was really similarly based on highlighting and doing awesome photography of different spaces in Boston that, you know, had I think a powerful history with African Americans. And so bringing someone like that who was already naturally invested and interested in the topic and then having them participate in this was a huge idea. So that to me was like, okay, this is going to work. This is, you know, the apprentices are learning and thriving, and also seeing that first reel was like, oh, wow, okay, this is really going to be something that I think is special for not only the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, but as a document broadly of around the history of America in this country. You know, for me, all pun intended, this kind of closes the loop in a literal way, right? Where you have young Black and brown Bostonians who aren't just the subject of history, they're the ones that are producing the record of it now. And that, to me, is the critical differentiator.
From monuments and meeting houses to barbershops and family homes, these sites reveal that Black history is foundational to Boston and the nation. The American Revolution is often remembered through the names and moments we've heard for generations. But these stories remind us of the contributions of Black Americans who we don't hear about enough. So here's to changing that. I want to give a huge shout out to everyone who was part of Change to Change, in front of the camera and behind it. And of course, a big thank you to the Loop Lab for making this series possible. That's it for this episode. I'm your host, Paris Alston, and until next time, stay rooted, stay revolutionary, and as always, stay tuned.